Houston needs Jalen Green to be the 20-point per game plus guy. Jalen Green, when he gets the ball, he's the focus of the defense, and then that's just not the case for those other guys. So I agree with you there, and I wanted to speak on that because it's so weird to me. It's like, why can't we celebrate this kid averaging almost 21 points a game?
State of the Rockets right now. You host State of the Rockets podcast. So let me just ask you, we went over the state of the Rockets. We talked a lot about Raphael Stone and the job that he's been doing there. What are you seeing so far? It's early. We're about an eighth of the way through the season. What are you seeing from the Rockets so far and how they're developing?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. So, steer me however if you got specific questions,
Sure.
Let me know. But it's been the Rockets are about 15% of the way through their season. They're 2-10. They're not very good. They started out, the big conundrum, the big debate with the Rockets right now is they started out wanting to bring Alperen Sengun off the bench. And a lot of people were split about that idea. They were going to go real guard heavy with Kevin Porter Jr. kind of being like their heliocentric type guy. And then they got Jalen Green, Jabari Smith. So then Bruno Fernando gets hurt, who was their starting center. And by way of default, Alperen Sengun is now the starting center. And he is proving that he deserves to be the starting center. So they started out really rough. They were 28th, I think, in offensive rating. They were bottom, 3 or 4 in the league in defensive rating. They were just very bad. They still are very bad. But they have now moved their offensive rating up. I think they're 24th in the league, if I'm not mistaken, at least on NBA.com. And that is largely in part due to Alperen Sengun starting, right? So the thing about the Rockets is they don't have an engine. They don't have like a player that offensively just makes things go and hum along smoothly. Stephen Silas's vision has seemingly been to make Kevin Porter Jr. that engine. I just don't think he's cut for it. He's a fine player. He's got a lot of skills, long way to go, long way to grow. But he's inefficient, and he's kind of like a volume scorer with secondary creating ability. He's not like a James Harden, 5 out, let me go to work and everybody's going to eat kind of player. And there's nothing wrong with that. Alperen Sengun, though, really, kind of is like the glue that makes it all work. And so he's started for the last 7 games. And over the last 3 games, they have really started to see some improvement. At one point this season, they were scoring 106 points per 100 possessions, which is 2 points per 100 possessions less than they were last season. And last season, they were terrible offensively. They scored like 108.1 points per 100 possessions. Now they're up to, I think on the season, they're up to like 108.7 or so. So they've jumped to almost 3 full points per 100 possessions because they're starting Sengun. Over the last 3 games, they're scoring, I think, 119.6 points per 100 possessions, which is much better than they've been doing. Their defense is still bad, I think worse than the league over that same stretch. But at one point, they were terrible offensively and defensively. Now they're looking like the classic young team that's really good, puts up a bunch of points offensively, but can't defend worth a lick. And I think that's kind of on target to develop. So that's where they're headed. They need a lot more from Jabari Smith. It's going to take him some time. He looks like a project at the moment. He needs to get some confidence going. He had a good game last night against the Raptors, 15-10. Which was nice to see. But yeah, they've got a lot of individual pieces that are starting to grow. But I think the highlight this season has been Alperen Sengun taking the leap, averaging 17 points, 10 boards, 1.1 blocks, 2-something assists per game. He's shooting 79% from the free throw line on almost 6 attempts per game. And he's doing all of this in like 27 minutes. So pretty impressive.
Absolutely. One of the other things that I think is concerning just as a fan or just when looking at any team that hangs out at the bottom for a couple years is you wonder if momentum starts playing a factor. I mean, you have, and I'm not saying the Rockets are outright doing this, but you've seen like the process in Philadelphia when they did that, but they had a lot of non-coherent starting fives and things like that they were rolling out during that. From what you're seeing, I mean, recent example, I guess, would be that KJ had asked for a trade, and then now it's looking like he's willing to talk about an extension. And I think a lot of that ties in with what you're talking about, that the offense is starting to improve. I mean, if guys are at least scoring, putting up more numbers, that definitely helps with chemistry and culture of the team. What do you see in terms of the culture of the team? And are you worried about this sort of like loser mentality setting in or something like that, not being able to come out of, 3 years of being towards the bottom of the league in the standings?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that's what was concerning about Sengun not starting, right? There's losing, and then there's like having fun while you're losing, and
True.
they're two very different things, right? Both for the actual players and the team and the people in the building, and for the fans. Rockets fans were watching them play, you know, bottom, just bottom three, bottom two defense and offense, and Sengun wasn't starting, and it looked ugly, right? It just didn't look good. It looked like they had no idea what they were doing. It looked like they were playing pickup basketball, and it was honestly it was kind of embarrassing. But now they're starting to play like NBA basketball, even though they play bad defense and they make mistakes and turnovers. They're playing NBA basketball. You're seeing it kind of like begin to slowly come together. So if that is happening, I think that's important. And some of that does have to do with KJ actually getting minutes to play and prove himself. He's having a great year so far. So, am I worried that they'll fall into a loser mentality? I guess my worry is, again, I don't mean to harp on Silas, but that's kind of been my thing, right? Is like, what does he see with the players he's given to bench Sengun or to play a certain way or whatever, run certain rotations, whatever it is. Like, what is he seeing, and how does that feed into how these kids develop? Because they're young, right? And so first 2-3 years are really important, and what they're being taught and how they're being taught to play is really important. So it's less of like a loser mentality and more of like, man, I hope they're being given like the right tools to actually grow, not just as individual talents, but like as a team. And Steven Silas has a lot to prove to me in that regard. I haven't really seen yet. Now, like I said, it's trending up, so I'm going to give it 82 games to monitor, and that's the approach. I'm not calling for his head or anything,
For sure.
but I am, I'm very interested to see, like, again, is Alperen Sengun kind of this nuisance that he's like got to figure out, or does he view him as? Can he eventually begin to view him as like a coveted piece, like his offense really? So Alperen Sengun is over the last 3 games has begun to help make Silas look like a good coach, and I want at some point Silas to stop combating that and to just understand like, hey, there's a different way. Whatever vision I had wasn't coming to fruition, and I need to be willing to adapt and adjust because this is actually kind of starting to work a little bit. So that's my concern. But look, anything can happen. I mean, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. They have had a tough schedule. Part of that is because every team they play is better than them because they suck. So it's like, what's a tough schedule and what's just being the worst team? I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
But look, Shingun's 20 and he's a young 20, right? He turned 20 in July. Jabari's 19, very long way to go. He's been a negative force in terms of like impact on the team, impact on winning. He has been a negative impact on winning so far. What do things look like if and when that begins to change for the better? KPJ is like their leader. He's 22. I mean, he's still very young. Sengun, like I said, 20. KJ's I think 21. Jalen Green 20. Usman Garuba 20. I mean, they're kids. So I don't know. It's there are times where they're really impressive for being kids, and then there's times where you're just like, oh damn, they're definitely kids. So at some point, maybe that changes, and maybe you kind of see that leap. I think they're going to need another top piece in the draft, and I think they're going to need a trade or a big free agent signing or a couple big free agent signings to like make it all come together. But they have some really good pieces in place if they can kind of get the other things situated.
Yeah, and I find it totally understandable. I mean, you're looking at potentially like a college-aged roster for a good chunk of the team, or at least a good chunk of the team that gets significant playing time.
Look at the starting lineup. Alperen Sengun, 20.
Right.
Jalen Green, 20. Jabari Smith, 19. Eric Gordon, 33, 34, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the last person? Kevin Porter Jr.,
yeah.
22. So 4 of those guys are 22, 20, 20, and 19.
Have to follow up with the development that you've seen from Jalen Green, and I do get this weird vibe. I've seen some stuff that I won't rehash, but it seems like he has been scrutinized more than other rookies in his class, and maybe some of that is the odd like Bill Simmons controversy that came into play that rubbed off on that or whatever. Even though they had a decent interview together after that. I, what are your thoughts on Jalen so far? I've been super impressed with his scoring ability, always been impressed with his athleticism. I mean, as with young players and much of the rest of this team, there's a lot of things to figure out where to be on the court at certain times, especially on the defensive end. But what are you seeing from him and his development so far? Are we going to have a Kobe Powell situation with Jalen and Sengun?
Wow, that would be. I'm gonna have to steal that for the future. That's good. I don't know how I
Go
didn't,
for it.
I don't know how I didn't think about that. That's great. Let me start by saying that the top 4 picks or 5 picks in his class, they are judged far differently than he is, at least from what I see on Twitter, and then what I hear people in the media say. Right, like there was the whole thing about, oh, Jalen Green's not a first team all rookie. Like, since when does a guy, when is the rookie that dropped the most 30-point games and the only 40-point game and 17 a game, second in the rookie class by 0.4? Like, since when is that guy not first team all rookie because Herb Jones helped the Pelicans win 36 games? It's just weird. It's like, no disrespect to Herb Jones, but since when has that been the criteria? It's like they're redefining and redrawing the lines. Even now, right? Like Evan Mobley, obviously incredible player. Cleveland's a great team, and he's a big part of it defensively for sure. He's kind of having not a down year, but he has shown no statistical growth, right? And clearly that's because they're stacked and they don't need him to be, but part of the Evan Mobley sell, everyone figured he'd be good at defense. Part of the sell was, hey man, unicorn, right? Ball handling potential, shooting potential, creation potential. He's good at passing. Like, people were talking Anthony Davis, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and that's a very high bar. And I'm not saying he won't hit that. He still could, but he's in a limited role because he's only taking 11 shots a game because they don't need him to do much else, right? Mm-hmm. So he's putting up like 15, 6, and basically the numbers look exactly like last season. Scotty Barnes, I think, very much the same. I mean, it just kind of looks more or less on paper like the same person. Cade is scoring more, I think. And, I think he's putting up like 20, 21, 6 and 6. He's very inefficient. He shoots, I think, worse from the field percentage-wise than Jalen Green. And people call Jalen Green like a volume chucker. He's still sub 30, I think, percent from 3. He's not getting to the line. The guys that have that Luka mold, that Harden mold, they get to the line. Cade's shooting like 3.5 free throws a game. And I know there's going to be people that say, oh, these are base statistics. Like, you're judging this very basic, in a very basic manner. And part of that is true, but part of that is also how we judge players, right? We judge by the numbers they put out.
Sure.
The Pistons aren't winning games. The Cavs are, but again, that's because they traded for Donovan Mitchell to add on to a pretty good team that they had last season. So Evan Mobley has the luxury of, falling back on his defense and just finishing when they need him to finish. He's going to have really big games. He's going to have games where he has 10 points and 5 rebounds. And that's just because Cleveland's that good. They don't need him to be more than that. Houston needs Jalen Green to be the 20-point per game plus guy. Jalen Green, when he gets the ball, he's the focus of the defense, and then that's just not the case for those other guys. So I agree with you there, and I wanted to speak on that because it's so weird to me. It's like, why can't we celebrate this kid averaging almost 21 points a game? He's had a few very, very inefficient, very poor shooting games, some like 4 of 19 and some 6 of whatever, and he's still just under 53% TS. So like as the season goes on, he'll probably eclipse where he was at last season, which was, I think, 54.7 or something TS, which was like 1/10 or 0.2% behind Evan Mobley, who's getting most of his baskets at the rim. So it's just weird. Now, on to him this season. I mean, he's as smooth as it gets, right? He's a volume guy. When the shots are falling, no one makes it look easier at this moment in the league. Defensively, he's got some growing to do. He still gets lost off ball. My biggest issue with Jalen Green, he's showing some creation potential. Like I said last night, he had 6 assists. Sometimes he looks lost, but I also think that Silas is not setting him up for success in some of these ways. Everything Jalen Green gets is tough. It's him initiating from 5 feet behind the 3-point line and just killing what he eats or eating what he kills, right? There's nothing, there's no easy action run for Jalen where it's just like, boom, backdoor cut, dunk. It's not like, at least it's not frequent. So he's earning everything he gets, and it's kind of made tough on him. He also doesn't get respect from the referees for whatever reason. Like, he gets hammered and they don't call it. He's only averaging, I think, 3 or something free throw attempts per game. If and when he can get that respect and get to the line 5 times, 6 times, 7 times a game, things will change for him. Because to go in hand with that, one of his other issues is finishing at the rim. Right now, he just bolts to the rim and like tries to finesse it like off the glass over people, or he euros and gets fouled and it doesn't get called or whatever. He doesn't do enough of decelerating at the basket and finishing with craft, using a shoulder, kind of, I don't know, quick step back, pump fake off the glass, whatever it is, just like finding creative ways to finish at the rim. So a lot of times he burns somebody and then he runs into bodies at the rim and doesn't take advantage of that. So once he figures that out, and that's the other thing, like with the coaching staff, I just wonder, do they work on these things? Because it seems really simple. It's basic stuff, shoulder dip, pump fake, like basic stuff that he just doesn't seem to be implementing at the moment. So if and when he's able to implement that, he's putting up 21 a night right now. If he adds those things, I mean, he could, he'll get to 25 or more a night eventually. But again, to be putting up 21 a night at 20 years old, I mean, the trajectory is kind of similar to Anthony Edwards, except I think Jalen Green has more potential. It just has higher potential. He's just a more fluid athlete, a more explosive athlete. Ant is stronger. I think Jalen's a better shooter. But either way, that type of trajectory. Last I checked, I haven't checked it after last night's game, so this might have changed. But I think after the Magic win, he was shooting 36% from three on 8 attempts per game. And again, these are contested threes. These are step backs. These are like, some of them are 33 footers. Like, they're not easy shots. They're coming off a curl, So pretty impressive, all things considered. Again, especially considering he's 20. He turns 21 in February. So